questions. I will just read out the questions and then try to identify who is the best person to answer, but of course every panelist is welcome to comment. Just feel free to talk after unmuting yourself. So the installation of mechanical ventilation does not yet ensure proper interior comfort. Is there promotion of staff training to handling the mechanical equipment? I turn to well, I can start as Reva. So I'm not sure what do you mean by promotion, but yes, of course, it's absolutely a key thing to make sure that actually technicians and both technicians, engineers, construction workers are properly trained. And there are many training initiatives. Usually the RIVA member associations in every country, for example, are training providers also which train technical experts, actually also installers and auditors, inspectors that deal with buildings. So yes, it's absolutely crucial to make sure that the systems are also installed and operated properly. I don't know if it answered the question. If anybody from the, I mean, if Atze, well, also the others from the panel, but maybe Atze is.
Yeah, this very very short addition, because we are making our buildings more and more complicated. Because if you want to do an energy efficient buildings, you bring in more technology than we would have done 20 years ago. Like think of heat pumps, mechanical ventilation, etc. If you do more complicated stuff, it's more complicated to do, so you need more training. So this is a very good point. Another thing I would like to point out, if we start taking this whole energy transition serious, it means actually a lot of work. So in terms of employing people, or I think about youth unemployment in the south of Europe, this is a very big chance, and especially if you combine your goals on the energy side with your goals on the health and comfort side. So.
Thank you. So the second question, the GRC study mentions improvements in IAQ from renovated ventilation systems if properly designed and operated. Are there specific examples of best practices such as NZEB with very good IAQ? Yes, so the GRC study has many references, so looked into projects but not describing them per se necessarily in the report. Also, this study actually we was involved, but we are not sure whether and how. So is the study available? But there are good examples. So I would just point out again the RIVA journal that Atze was also highlighting at his last slide. So we in the RIVA journal have recurringly the topic, of course, of indoor environment quality, and there, for example, there are many case studies which is freely available and also in the free search online in our website. And Atze, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, let's just jump because we have quite a lot of questions. Yes.
So Anita mentioned that we are at a sort of impasse in negotiations regarding IAQ and EPBD, if I understood correctly. What could set the ball rolling to move forward with better regulations? Well, as far as we know, so actually it was member states who, at least that's what the Parliament and the news are, who cover the negotiations are claiming, that basically the positions of member states were they were not open to any compromise, which the Parliament would have been willing to do and even proposed. And that's why the negotiations stuck. So it's the only thing is now that it's in the hands of the member states. There are some member states, especially, for example, Poland once pointed out, but every country has very specific views. Even Germany, for example, they don't like the idea of having inspection-related requirements strengthened. Because I was just in an event last week where the German Federal Ministry was represented, and they said that everything should be solved by the market, but which is not the case, we know. So now it's actually member states, and what can we move them is lobbying at member state level, and hope that the pressure in Brussels, we can only say that we also send again open letters and try to put pressure on member states, but of course it's very difficult, and every member state has a different opinion. Unfortunately, these opinions are not coming together towards a compromise opinion. So the problem is now even member states are kind of blaming each other, if you allow me to say that, because there are some member states who are much more progressive, including, I guess, the presidency country Estonia, while others have their specific views. And they have to come to a consensus, and that's the problem.
Anita, if you want, I can jump to the next three ones, so you can breathe a little bit.
Thank you.
The next one is the application of SAN standards on IAQ obligatory or not? Well, it's not obligatory. The last round, because we also produced a couple of SAN standards, including one about environmental quality about 10 years ago, and then there was only one country, Portugal, that actually made on a country level the IEQ part obligatory. Having said this, some countries already have some standards and requirements in relation to indoor air quality and ventilation. But the answer of like what's in the SAN standard that I showed, it's not automatically obligatory. Then the next question, either or actually. So Adrian Joyce here is saying that we should look at both at the same time. Well, that's exactly my point. So I totally agree. Good point. Then the next one is, so the comment is that the way we talk about it is very much about ventilation and not too much about sources of indoor pollutions like materials. I think that's a very good point. So if you talk about good air quality, you should talk about more than just fresh air supply, ventilation ducts. You have to talk about location, for example. If you have a building next to like a very polluted area, a highway or whatever, you have to think about location, filtration. You have to think about the materials you bring in, like it said here, like chemicals, volatile organic compounds that emit from materials. We have examples from insulation projects where they use this PER kind of insulation that actually brought some problems. So yes, we should look at the materials too. Okay, maybe back to you, Anita.
Yes, thank you. So just two short comments. So regarding the SAN standard, yes, that's the problem. That again, it's a member state country competence to apply them or not, and that's why we set up, for example, the EPB Center, and RIVA has many activities that try to involve member states as well to make sure that it is it is one harmonized way that as it is implemented. But we know Europe, there will be always differences, and yes. Then I jump to, I'm trying to see, the right question. Are we not too late introducing health IAQ requirements, as there are many renovations done in Europe which focus only on energy efficiency? I don't think that it's late ever for this. Well, RIVA has been advocating for this, I think, forever its existence, and especially for the last 10 years, or like since EPBD is there. And there are some improvements, so we should also see that this topic is not also in the parliament level. Let's see, at least is like mentioned every day. And it's better, so the situation is getting better, and we learn, for example, we learn from the bad examples of badly done renovations. And if we have a look at the renovation rate in Europe, I think there is still room, and we have time to point this out, of course, not only via these seminars, but by training of actual professionals that do the job. So that's my point. There is Another concept that promotes a lot health and comfort in buildings, Active House Alliance. Yes, we are aware of them, so we also try to work with the Active House Alliance. They also had, have articles sometimes in our journal, for example, but they are a very well-known stakeholder organization, and also the leading industry partner, and Velux was involved in this healthy building event series, and also promotes a lot of studies on the sector. So yes, I can just recommend everybody to have a look at their activities as well. If I understood correctly from a graph on your presentation, we can say that there is...
Let me answer that, sorry, Anita.
Okay.
Because the graph is very much about energy use per square meter on the one hand, and like health performance on the other hand. So it's not just about airtightness. And energy performance, of course, is related to airtightness, but a lot of other things too, like insulation. So you should not confuse the two. Having said this, I think if you want to do good designs, you have to give to designers, architects, etc., the performance requirements on the energy side, like maximum energy use per square meter, but also performance requirements in terms of environmental quality, like maximum temperature, maximum CO2 concentration, daylight factors, things like that. That should be the conclusion from the graph.
Okay, and the next one is also to you, actually, regarding health issues that are now even increasing, and minimum supply air rates, whether there is an overall European value and for designers, and what should this be?
Yeah, so very short, and maybe also Roberta wants to comment on this. The article I showed, it kind of says that, looking at the literature, that if you ventilate like an air exchange rate, so this is about how fast you exchange the air. If you have an air exchange rate of 1 in a room, it means all the cubic meters of air in that room will be changed within an hour. And this article said that if you do an air exchange rate of 0.5 or more or better, then you won't have problems. And for offices, we also have studies that show that if you ventilate like 7 liters per second per person, ideally 10 liters per second per person, if you are at that level or higher, in most cases you won't have any problems, assuming you don't have like high emitting materials, etc.
Yes, and just one comment. So these tables I showed you in my presentation at the beginning. There are some rates as well, but there is no European. There is WHO-based guidelines, but it's again a country-specific requirement. Where are we? Yes, Anita mentioned. How are the member states going to implement the adequate advice alternative for inspection? We don't know. But what we know is that this option is there currently from the second EPB, which is valid from 2010 was the date where everywhere it should have been implemented, and we know that there were no. It was not a good result. So if we monitor, they didn't achieve much with this adequate advice. So I think there is no you can't ensure with this adequate advice that that anything will happen regarding inspection or regarding real counseling of users or building owners on their buildings. Which are the most important parameters to measure and monitor buildings, apart from temperature, humidity, and carbon dioxide?
Yeah, maybe it's not an easy question to answer. I'm also not sure how much time we have, Alexander, but there's all kinds of things like volatile organic compounds, fine particles, for example. If you have an outdoor air quality outside, I mean, do you keep the ultrafine particles out, for example? Mold and moisture, mold spores. So there's a lot, and actually the SEN standard, it kind of addresses quite a few of these issues.
I suggest that we take a couple of more questions until 11:30 exactly, then move to the next two presentations, and then keep a little bit more time than originally planned for the webinar for as many questions as we can, and at around 11:15, if okay. Sorry, 12:15, if okay with you.
Can I, because there's a very interesting question. It says at ATSE, and then based on your experience in the field. That's a question I very much would like to spend 2 minutes on, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
Yeah. So the question is, right now we've seen a lot of bottom-up approach, but the question is, what could real-time information do if we provide that to users in terms of trigger action? I think that's an excellent point. Because the thing within the environmental quality, with things like temperature, high CO2 concentrations, it's all invisible, so it's kind of a little bit abstract. So we've been involved also with REVA in projects, for example, in schools, because school ventilation is often a problem, and to really start like managers of schools, but also like governments, to really trigger them to think about something should be done about air quality in schools. There's basically two things that needs to be done, and one is there's a lot of examples of projects where you bring in these traffic lights. I mean, they turn red if the CO2 concentration goes up, because if you bring that in an average school, it will be red like 80% of the time, indicating that the air quality is not good. And then, of course, as teachers start talking to each other, like, we should do something about it. And then the director of school starts calling the mayor of the city, like, we need money to improve the ventilation. And so this is an excellent point. I think that we should start thinking about how to provide more like real-time information about what people actually are exposed to. I mean, who that is listening right now knows what the fine particle concentration in their bedroom is at night. And actually right now there's a lot of technology that allows you already to measure this, quite cheap technology, and how about we start using that?
Okay, and maybe should we still take one question? The next one, air tightness is directly related to unventilated buildings, especially old ones, when there is no possibility to implement mechanical ventilation. Actually, that's rather a comment. So I guess, I don't know if you want to comment further on it, Atze, but yes.
Well, it's one short comment is because we had a lot of discussions about this when we did the SAN standard. I think if you do a good design or redesign of the building, you on the one hand look at air tightness of the building. So when there's a lot of wind outside, you make sure that most of the outdoor air stays outside, because otherwise the building cools down in winter, etc. But apart from the air tightness of the facade, you also should look at a ventilation system, and it can be with just mechanical exhaust or mechanical exhaust and supply. So you should look at more than just air tightness and operable windows, but also at some kind of system that is put in place to make sure that there's air going in and out. So it's basically two different things you need to design, and in conjunction with each other, I think.
Okay, and then we are on time. I think we should go to the two next presentations. And first, Kristina Klimovic from Buildings 2030 will talk about the Building for People initiative, healthy and sustainable buildings.
Thank you, Anita. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's